what you want is human, just to have that human to human interaction. I mean, we're
Exactly.
all parked on this planet temporarily, and
Exactly.
really, we're all in the same struggle, just different versions of it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that separates one person from another. And actually, we've talked about this before too. You mentioned alchemy just a couple minutes ago,
Right.
and they throw around these terms of salt, sulfur, and mercury, right? The salt being the physical body. Of course, you do have to train the physical body to a degree for this type of work. It's also known as the first way, if you will, right? The way of the moving center, the way of the body.
Right. Right.
But then you've got sulfur, which has to do with the individual soul that is a planetary expression, mostly based on what kind of forces and frequencies were present when you were conceived and then also imprinted upon on your first breath. So there's kind of like two phases to that soul creation. But that's unique to you. Your
Right.
soul is just as unique to you or just as different to you as like oil of oregano is different to oil of spearmint, for
Right.
example. That's
Right.
you. It's your essence. And of course, the uh, mercury has to do with in the plant kingdom has to do with the alcohol, or I should say ethanol, which
Right.
is the same from plant to plant to plant, right? If you get a plant to ferment, it will always make ethanol as its type of alcohol that it does. A little bit of methanol, and you have to strain that off. But I mean, by and large, uh, if you distill the ethanol out of fermented potatoes and distill the ethanol out of fermented anything, grapes, whatever, distill the ethanol out, you won't be able to distinguish the difference. You won't know where it came from. And so that's the concept of the spirit, which is just one above the soul. Has to it's the solar aspect, not SOUL, but SOLAR. Yeah, solar aspect.
Right.
Whereas the soul, SOUL, comes from the realm of all planets in the ray of creation, and then the physical body obviously comes from Earth. Yeah?
Right.
And if
Right.
you want to get technical about it, then the personality, which kind of is, I'll call it a necessary evil, and you'll understand why. But it comes from the moon, the personality. Yeah, it's that interchange within the realms of the ray of creation. And then, of course, if you end up building a higher embodiment, higher than the spirit embodiment, then that goes up to the galaxy in which we live, the Milky Way galaxy. So you've got these opportunities, and one way to think about it too, from a certain standpoint, they're all in you all the time, sort of like nesting dolls. Yeah, those Russian Matryoshka
Yes.
nesting dolls. So you got
Yes.
the physical, and then you've got the astral, having to do with all planets or your soul, and you've got your spirit, and you've got the causal, and and so on and so forth in there. But if you think about it from that perspective, you can sort of see yourself as a bar emanating down where you feel yourself as a terminal point on that bar, but it emanates all the way up through the ray of creation to the star chamber in the sidereal next to the chamber of God itself, he, she itself. Yeah. So, it's a different kind of perspective to think of yourself as a bar through creation, as opposed to an entity kind of banging around on the planet trying to figure it all out. You do have higher aspects to you that are already fully developed. We just don't hear them, generally speaking, without a certain kind of training.
Right. Right. It's to do with frequencies in part, I believe. The other, it it was funny. I was having a dialogue with a coworker, and she said something really funny. It caused me to chuckle, and part of me I wanted to open it up, but I'm at work, so that's kind of one of my territories that's not not inside the work site. It's like it just doesn't happen. But it was very funny because she said, we were talking about men and women, right? And something came up about behind every great man there's a greater lady, an even greater lady. There's a powerhouse. There's the strength or the pillar of strength. And she goes, yeah. She says, I've wondered something about what is and she was talking about basically her she has no issues with her ex-husband being the peacock, basically,
Mhm.
the way I
Yeah.
described it. She says, I'm comfortable behind the scenes. She says, I'm comfortable supporting. And I was chuckling. I said, yeah. I said, behind every great, man, there's an even greater lady. And she goes, yeah. She says, and
With
one,
a frying pan.
that's exactly. I had that image of the skillet Simpson marked on his forehead,
Tongue.
being brought back into line, right? And then the question came up is, one wonders what's behind God.
Hmm.
Everybody has this image, or culturally here in the States, as far as I can see or understand from most of the people or most of the religions, is God is a man. God is a masculine figure, not a man, but a masculine figure.
Didn't
So
used to be, but yeah. Nowadays, yeah, sure.
yeah, exactly. Nowadays, right? And so then that question came up is, being a peacock, and where's the strength for God? And I thought, wow, that's an interesting way to put it. An interesting thought.
Yeah.
The powerhouse behind that title or that name or that entity. Um,
Even if you go back to, I mean, the correlations between the male and female aspects are quite clear in certain uh, Eastern belief systems, for example,
yes,
Hinduism,
yes,
Brahmanism, all these sorts of things. It's quite obvious. In Western culture, it's become quite unobvious, right? Early, I wouldn't call it necessarily Judaism at that point in time, but the early Canaanites who were the progenitors, proto-Hebraic and progenitors of the Judaic religions, um,
right.
had Yahweh and Asherah. Right? They were Yahweh had a consort, yeah, a female goddess.
Forgot about that.
And some of
Yes,
that
yes.
still creeps into the. I had a hard time getting all the references out to the polytheistic aspects and the male female god goddess kind of combination aspects of the Hebrew scriptures. I had hard time scrubbing that as they were trying to go through. And so you end up with these passages, for example, in Genesis, where when it starts over, yeah, in chapter 2, starts the creation story over again, and it's got a lot of differences. And it says, male and female, he created them. And the idea behind that, the original idea, was that human was androgynous. It was both male and female, like the God that created created
Right.
humans. And then you get the story of Eve and the rib, which comes from Sumer, actually, because Ninti, I think it was, Ninti, Ninti is how you spell it in the English language, was known as the Lady of the Rib. Yeah, so they kind of pulled it from the Sumerians and brought it into this context, and but yeah, your point is well taken because you get this divergence away from a god goddess type of entity that of course would have had to be both. Yeah, if it's a single entity, it would still have to be both. And my argument for this is that let's say that you're a painter, right? Let's say that you're an artist or a sculptor or something like that. Gotta watch my hands. Is it gonna do it to me? Yeah, stupid camera. You gotta, but you're some sort of artist, right? And you
Right.
have a canvas in front of you, and you go, okay, I'm gonna paint what's in me, right? And so you begin to get your brush strokes going and mixing various colors and all of this sort of thing. And what you realize in the end is that you cannot paint something that's not already in you. You can't create
Yes.
something that doesn't come from you. Yeah. No matter how hard you try. Uh, Even if you contemplate, I mean, what you got like Starry Night is a brilliant piece. Yeah. Like
Yes.
brilliant
Yeah.
piece, but it obviously had to come through him to be able to paint Starry Night, yeah, as abstract as it is. Or you get MC Escher, Escher and all these kinds of things. Picasso, kind of wonder what was going through him at the time, but
I know.
but so to think, sorry, my phone is not muted, so let me just do that real quick. To think that uh, a god, a male god, could create both male and female when he has no aspect of female, I should say, has no aspect of female, is uh, a bit shallow to think that
So
way.
no, and I realized that was very shallow, or for me, that was very shallow thinking on my end, and I put blame on the upbringing I had in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Like, we all need somebody to blame, or joke. But anyway, um, so I had a question. You have the oh my Lord, the prima. I can see it in front of me. Prima materia,
Prime matter of the
prime matter,
alchemist.
right? And off that, you've got your celestial niter, and you've got your celestial. I
Ah, right.
can't
Yeah.
even think. And so, at any rate, that started coming up in me thinking
Okay.
about that dual, that
You've got
dual
the
nature.
positive and negative coming out of the prima materia in an alchemical
Yes,
sense, where it draws
yes,
that tree, right? Where you've got
exactly.
the fixed and the volatile, and then it goes into the air and fire and the water and earth and all that. Yeah, that's
Yes.
yes. Yeah.
So that popped above my head. Um, a short while later, after she had made that statement, I thought, no. And so that's something I want to open up more, either right now or by myself. It doesn't matter. But just think about it and try to re-enter it, reopen it. If that makes sense to look at it. But I just thought it was very interesting that came up, and then why did I have that connection to the niter and to the? That's good. That's terrible. I can see it. Um, but the negative and positive.
Yeah, fixed
Um,
and volatile.
yes, fixed. Yes,
Yeah.
fixed and volatile. Um,
Solve and coagula, et coagula, as they also used to say. Yeah.
yes, yes. Yeah, absolutely fascinating.
Huh?
Yeah,
Good. Well, it's kind of along the frequency of something that I wanted to work into a bit tonight.
yeah.
I don't. Can you read what's on the board?
Let me grab my glasses here.
Yeah. If not, I can try and zoom the
Yeah, the
camera in.
thinking, moving, instinct, motion, and sexual.
Yeah, right. Because I want to work into it because I don't think it was ever really fully explored to the extent that it should have been in the Eamon, for example, which is fine because, well, it just is. So you don't need to excuse it, right? But I think it should have been given more attention than it was. And the reason why is because if you intend to change the machine of self, you need to understand how it works, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna go. You remember the old tube style televisions with a fly
Yes. Yes.
transformer, and I mean, there's some things in there that'll really bite you and hurt you if you don't understand how the thing works. You know, early on, I used to repair TVs and monitors, and yeah, you have a certain protocol, right? Because you don't want 15,000 volts from the flyback transformer going through your heart as you're unplugging that little suction cup thing in there. You got to know what it is that you're working with, and I know you can relate with your industry.
Oh, very, very much. That's why I got into electronics. I opened up a cabinet and this damn red wire kept getting in my way, and I happened to have a uninsulated set of dikes, and I nipped that wire and it kicked me across the room about 13 feet into a couch. And I said, wow,
Good.
So
No,
yeah, yeah. So it's yeah. I'm sorry to
no, no,
digress.
no, not at all. But they need to be understood and they need to be opened up um, in a more in-depth and more practical kind of way than
Right.
just a light pass over the thinking, moving, instinctive, emotional, and sexual aspects of things. So I thought I would try to open that up a little bit more
Oh, wonderful.
and
Yes.
also give an exercise that you could do over the next few days or weeks, or if you want to take it up as a lifelong practice, great. Yeah. I think it's going to open up some of the territories for you. So probably the best place to start would be to go through each of them one by one and just kind of get out what you know. What do you know about the thinking center, for example? And then we'll open that up and we'll go move on to the moving center and so on and so forth. So uh, if your pumps are primed,
I think
just
so.
give me a little mini lesson on what you know about the thinking center, if you will.
So what's very interesting about the thinking center is it is the slowest of them all,
Okay.
and that it's been proven countless times through not only through public experience or scientific experiments and so forth. The whole process of the brain having to react and say why somebody would train themselves to drive an automobile, as an example, or a police officer would train to be able to draw their weapon and so forth. At that point, it is no longer, I think about all the muscles I need to do or all the actions I need to do. So the thinking has been proven very, very slow in comparison to the other centers. It is one that is more, I don't want to say factual, but it's like well, part of it to me is it's gathering data. It's got to gather information. It is it's almost like not assessing, but it's like a library bank. Like oh, the thinking center is very I mean, yeah, I mean, on one side, I mean, I'm going to just throw everything out. Basically, on one side, it can be very problematic in that we can start to get in kind of a loop, or start running in a loop without ingesting more information. We humans tend to go in a loop, and we can make these assumptions or these judgments or these assessments. um
Yeah, right.
so
So
basically it's a very
let's stick with that and we'll work
yeah,
through it methodically. Okay.
yeah.
You mentioned that it's slow, and I agree with you to a point. We talked last time, I think in the Saturday meeting, about how we label things. You see a tree, you label it as a tree. You see
Exactly.
a
Yes.
car, a person, all this type of stuff, and we end up becoming label makers. At
Yes.
one point in time in this tradition, or at least a tangential tradition to this, it was called that part of the thinking center was called the formatory apparatus. Okay, so it's formatory thinking, and there's an evolutionary reason for it because at 100 billion bits a second of information coming into the brain life, it needs some shortcuts. And if you had to, the classic examples, if you had to think about how to get out of bed and brush your teeth and shower and, actually step by step, left leg, now let's see, right leg, and then right leg again. No, I fucked up. And, if you had to think about all of these types of things, you'd never make it. You'd never make it to
Right.
work in the morning. It'd be nighttime by the time you got your teeth brushed. so, so our minds, our brains, and our thinking center, and all of them as their own complex, form the formatory apparatus to help deal with those
It,
mundane things.
yeah, it's like
Yeah,
little shortcuts. You've got shortcuts that
sure,
are in
shortcut,
um,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
so you can
and that part is what's slow. Believe it or not, that you think a shortcut would be faster than the thought process, but that's actually the slow part. So when you're talking about the speed of thought being slow, that's that aspect of it. There is another deeper aspect that is incredibly fast. It's just that we rarely ever access it, except for like in times of trouble. Yeah, the car accident
Right.
starts to happen. Yeah, I know because you were thinking that, but car accident starts to happen, and all of a sudden everything moves in slow motion.
Yes.
That is the switch over into that aspect of oneself where you literally feel like you've just slowed time around you. Yeah. And I've had this experience because, as you know, uh, I became fairly accomplished in martial arts. And there were definitely some times when I was practicing that I felt like I had all the time in the world, like
Yes.
a strike was coming in. It's like, huh. Watch
It's
it pass by,
it,
that sort of thing. I mean, it really does happen.
yes. Yes.
Kind of reminds me of the movie The Matrix, right? Go back against the bullets and all this type of stuff. It's sort of what it feels like, but that's not that can occur in the moving and instinctive centers with certain things, but it's also an aspect of the thinking center. So you're right, and yet with an elevation, there's a bit more to it than that.
There's another avenue also that I've seen a lot and noticed a lot in myself. And I know at one point it was called the sequential sequence.
Heard that
I
term, yeah.
extrapolated on that, and it's amazing to watch that sequence of myself. It is greased lightning.
Mm,
Thought process, it is so fast because I have these reference points.
yeah,
It's no longer in that slow mental process or yeah, the mental process of assessing and learning that's a tree, that's called a tree, and it grows leaves or needles or whatever. It's now at the point where that thinking is so lightning fast that it's like a pinprick reference,
yeah,
and it ricochets off, and in a span of a microsecond I have gone through 30 different worlds basically of thought processes or not realities, but like things that are just so amazing. I mean, if I slowed them down, which I've actually been able to a couple of times, actually go back and follow that process, it blows my mind how fast I got from point A to point B, and it
yeah,
touched on dozens of different topics, and I mean that don't seemingly appear to be related.
yeah.
And that was always a contradiction in me. That's why I'm kind of excited to hear this other side of the coin, is because that was a contradiction in me, because that thinking was literally like grease lightning. The
Here's kind of the reason why. Okay, let's say that you're presented with a problem. Now,
right,
as that problem comes into your formatory apparatus, it has to go. Okay, the problem has to do with, for example, math, right? And then from there, it has to figure out, okay, so in the realm, in the domain of math, it has to do with algebra. And so it makes another detour to algebra, whereas it could have gone calculus, it could have gone geometry, it could have gone any number of different directions. But now it's decided that it's algebra. And then it goes, okay, what sort of algebra is it? Is it a differential equation? Is it, it can take all of these paths. This is what makes it short, I mean, longer, even though it's a shortcut, because it's very good at classifying going from problem to math to algebra to differential equations. Yeah,
right.
in that thing. That's the shortcut. Uh, but if you take a mathematician that only does math, I don't know. Can you see the diagram okay? Is it clear enough? I can zoom in
Yes.
if you need to. Just let me know if you need me to zoom in, okay?
No, definitely.
Yeah. But you take a mathematician or someone who's been studying physics their whole life or studying music, a really good
Yep.
example.
Yep.
A musician within the first couple of notes can pick up not only the style of music that it is, the timbre, the beat, all of these sorts of things, and probably even be able to improvise with it after a few more notes, even if they haven't heard the song before, because they can get to that they get beyond the formatory aspect of it into the actuality of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where the speed differences come in the thinking center. Okay, let's move on to the moving center. What do you know?
Um, um, just a little side note on music.
Yeah.
That's started to happen to me. I played trumpet for 14 years, and I
Oh,
noticed that ability, as I called it, of a few notes in, I was able to,
you know where
uh,
it's going already.
yes, and it
Yeah.
was so odd to feel it arise in me without thinking about it, so to speak. Like, okay, this has got to be with, blah blah blah. Now, the moving center is one that um, it's kind of odd. Um, a big part of it for me is repetition.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is so I have a coworker whose kiddo wrecked her car, and so he was talking about this whole scene and all that, and what ran through my head at that time was this is a young person that just started driving
Hmm.
and does not have the muscle memory that which to me is part of the moving center, that muscle memory of that
Yeah.
repetition.
Yeah.
um, Tried to pick up her phone to answer a call and ended up driving into a tree. Um, and it wasn't about the whole driving into the tree. It wasn't about this young lady and so forth. What it was about for me was, wow, that's the moving center at play. It a juggling. So it's teaching it. This is what I want, and through repetition, it will run with it. It'll do accurately, very very well. At that point, it's got it down. So I don't even have to think about moving my hands like I've been doing. It does that
You're
make
very
sense?
close. You're
Yeah,
very close to it. You're very close to the way that it works. The one piece of the puzzle that you might want to ponder on, and I don't know if you know this or if you've heard this before, but each center has a thinking, moving, and emotional aspect to it. So, for example, the thinking center has a thinking part, a moving part, and an emotional part. The emotional center has thinking, moving, and emotional, okay, aspect to it. It's just where what predominates in it. And so, in certain aspects, what you're describing is not actually the moving center as it sits within the complex, but is actually the moving part of the thinking center. So when you take an example of, uh,
yes,
I'm
yes,
old enough to look, I'm old enough to, and so are you, that you probably learned to drive a stick shift, as opposed to an automatic where you just kind of pop it into gear and go. Stick shift, it's clutch in, first gear's up here, clutch out slowly with the accelerator, and then clutch in, drop off the accelerator, and second, third, fourth, and fifth, or whatever. Um, and It's a lot of thought, right? You're, grinding gears and over revving the engine, or sudden starts because you pop the clutch out too quick. I mean, it's right. It's hell. It's hell driving with someone learning that way.
yes,
But
yes.
what gets it at first is the moving part of the thinking center, because once they understand, the most helpful thing for me is my uncle taught me to drive, and the most helpful thing for me is he described what was happening in the clutch as this was happening. That it has this pressure plate that sits there and spins right with the engine and transmits that force. And then when you push the clutch in, one continues to spin, whereas the other one loosens up so that it can switch gears, and then it joins back up with it again as you let the clutch out. And so, having this kind of conceptualization in the thinking allowed it to go into the moving part of the thinking center. So I could visualize the process. Once you can visualize the process as a single sequence, then what happens is whichever center is primarily responsible will drop it to the appropriate aspect. And so it goes from the moving part. The thinking center is where it all starts. You have to learn it
Right,
first.
right.
Once it has the moving part of the thinking center, understands the concept, then it can move it to the moving center proper. And this is the point where you no longer have to visualize the sequence as as a puzzle all coming together. You just drive. Yeah, you're smoking a
Right.
cigarette and you're changing the channel on the radio and you're having a conversation and you're still looking out for traffic and all of this type of stuff. That's then the moving center, because the only thing that the moving center proper handles is actual body movement. Okay, it doesn't handle what you think it does. It's what handles all
The
kinds of other
mechanical side
things.
of it.
Yeah, like scratching your head and yeah, all this type of stuff. And it has a friend. Its friend, which is why we, its friend is the instinctive center. If you're familiar with the term hydrogens, they both run on the same hydrogen, H48 to be exact, or H H24 is where they should. Most of the time they run on 48, but H24, hydrogen 24, is what they should run on, and they hand processes back and forth to each other. For example, if you're hungry, the instinctive center says, go eat, and then you go, and the moving center knows how to do it, knows how to satiate the instinctive need. The instinctive center by itself can only guard you against loud noises and falling. There's a third, actually, also protecting your reproductive systems. Okay, babies are only afraid of loud noises. They startle with loud noises.
Yes. Yes.
And falling is the only two things. If you put a baby on like a glass table with part of it solid and the other part dropping off, a baby at a very young age will crawl up to the edge, see the depth, and not crawl across, even if it's safe to traverse the glass on the other side. It will stop and not let itself fall. That's the instinctive center. Okay.
And
Even then, the moving center says brakes.
yeah.
Right? So, that's the difference between the moving center and instinctive center, but they cooperate quite well together. And the instinctive center is the one in the human, or at least I should say, in our culture and society, that is generally speaking the least messed up, the least polluted, the least used for the improper things, all this sort of stuff, because its sole job is to keep you alive as long as possible.
Right.
And to make more of you, and to make more of you. So that's primarily what it does. So in situations, I'll take martial arts as an example again.
Right.
In martial art, you begin by just understanding the moves. You begin with the thinking center. You go, okay, this kata or this form or these types of things. Here are the steps involved. Then it goes into the moving part of the thinking center, then to the moving center itself. And so then the moving center can run through a whole form while your brain is doing something else entirely. Yeah, and they try to get you not to do that, but you might be thinking about the day while your body is going through the form, the kata, that sort of thing. That's your moving center has it. Now, the moving center at some point in time actually has the power to be able to train the instinctive center, the instinct, if the instinct asks for it. If the instinct says, actually, that movement that you have could aid in my survival, it can hand it over to the instinctive center so that it can make it part of its survival toolbox. Continuing the illustration of martial arts, you get to the point with the development of it. If something flies out at you, you suddenly go into whatever type of movement is appropriate for that situation. It's not your moving center; it's your instinctive center that borrowed that sequence for you. Yeah, and it's got all kinds of patterns worked out based on all the sequences that the moving center has come up with. Now let's back up for a moment, because we just talked about the moving center and instinctive center. Sometimes something will come into the thinking center and its appropriate realm or appropriate reference point is not the moving center, but the emotional center. In other words, it has more of an affinity to an emotion than it does a thought. For example, your perception of beauty. Your perception of beauty as you're looking out at the morning sunrise or sunset or an ocean or whatever the case might be, that's an emotional aspect of the thinking center. That then, once you get a connection to it, it will eventually hand it over to the emotional center instead of the moving center because it speaks that language, it belongs there. That's what you call sentiment, but not of the lower cultural way of it, but when you value and hold a sentiment for something. A great example is if you hold a sentiment for the home that you live in, for how wonderful it protects you from the elements, how it keeps you warm, how it locks up and keeps you safe, how when you walk into a room, you have light ready, on the ready for it. If you hold a value and sentiment for how precious that aspect is to you, if you see something dusty, dirty, that needs repair, something that needs attending to, it's your sentiment of value that you have for that that's going to really compel you to address it, compel you to take care of it, right? Now, you can also hire a house cleaner who likely doesn't have that same kind of sentiment. They will go through and they will dust and they will carry out all the actions that you might carry out if you were doing it yourself, but they won't hold the sentiment for it. They'll hold the value proposition to being able to feed their family because you're paying them, and so on and so forth. They have a different kind of sentiment or value for it, whereas your value is your love of this dwelling that you have, your love of this space, and what it means on a grander level or on a more significant level, on a sentiment, not sentimental. If that makes sense.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, scent, right? SENT from ment, sentiment. Yeah, the emotion is sent from the ment, the mental. That's where it comes from. Okay, right. Interestingly enough, too, if you take all of these first letters of the words here and scramble them about, you get things like emits and times.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
EMITS. Right. So there's a bit of a deeper view about how the centers work. And of course, for example, the emotional center has a thinking, moving, and emotional aspect to it. Anything emotional in the emotional center, it's going to keep. Anything that that it receives emotionally, but is more aligned with the thinking center, is going to go back to the thinking center for refinement. And so what you get is this web of all five centers having conversations with one another, except we're really a broken pentagram for the most part. What I mean by that is that most people have a moving center. Well, everyone has a moving center, a thinking center, an emotional center, a sexual center, instinctive center. But they don't know how to talk to each other. It's like one speaks Chinese, another speaks Arabic, another speaks Russian, another speaks Greek. And they're all trying to send these sorts of things saying, hey, the emotional center, right? I have some content for you. And it's babbling away in Arabic when the emotional center speaks Chinese. And so the emotional center,我不知道, right? I don't understand. Yeah. And so we're a broken pentagram. It's like we're 5 points without the interconnecting lines. And so the first realm of study really has to do with making those lines, teaching the centers how to speak a common language so that they understand one another, so that they don't get confused when one center is taking in information that really belongs to another center that needs to hand it off. And this is where you get laziness in centers. Thinking center thinks it can just do emotions. Yeah, and you get these kind of dry emotions that aren't real emotion. They have no sentimental value. They have no connected value with them. Or you get something like the thinking center stealing energy from the sexual center, right? And the sexual center is completely depleted, can't hardly do anything with it. And the thinking center's on a high, on a buzz, because it's got the wrong kind of fuel. It's got nitro infused fuel in it, whereas it shouldn't run like that. You burn it out. So it's very complex. This is what I'm really getting at. Yeah, and I appreciate you putting some of the things out there that are already in you about them. I'm sure that you have a lot more, but I'm trying to draw a more profound web of being able to understand kind of the complexities that happen within things. Yeah, in this whole system here. So I have a question for you then. Given all this,
Okay.
I'm going to remove the clutter. Go back to just the centers, if possible. We've talked a lot about the four elements, and really there's five because we just don't talk about the ether, but we've
Right.
got air, earth, water, fire, yeah, type of thing. What would you put with the thinking center from those four elements? Air, earth, water, or fire? It's going to open up a world for you.
That God, I wouldn't know what to say on the thinking. It is almost like a error in the context that it's very the possibilities are endless, if you will. It's
Absolutely
not
right.
necessarily, emotions play in a certain arena. The thinking is more of a
You're right.
not anything goes, but very
Air.
open.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
air. It is the air element
Yeah.
from that standpoint. How about moving center? What would you
Well,
say?
that would be more the fluidic or the water being fluidic, mechanical. Well, not necessarily.
Left, 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 right. Moving center. That's a very moving center thing, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
What alchemical symbol is this?
Oh, that is fire.
Fire. Yeah, moving center is fire. The thing the moving center loves to do is to move. That's all it wants to do. I just want to move, want to go,
Yeah.
want to get, want to, you know.
Yeah.
A couch potato has a messed up moving center. Okay, right? They have a moving center that they forgot about.
Yeah, yeah.
When you go on walks, you should be pushing yourself. You should be, like on your climbs, you should be really pushing yourself. Walk an extra mile just because your moving center loves to do it. That's how you begin to train your moving center and also show it that you value what it does for you. You appreciate it. Yeah. Other centers don't like it. other centers, like the instinctive center, kind of goes into a panic sometimes. Like, we're gonna die, if we go an extra mile, we're gonna die. Stop this now, right? Hold on, now I have to deal with lactic acid, right, or whatever yeah, I think it's lactic
Oh,
acid.
yes, yes, yes,
Whatever
yes.
builds up in your muscles and burns, that sort
Yeah,
of thing. Yeah,
yeah.
that sends the instinctive center into a tizzy. Now how am I going to generate the right peptides to be able to neutralize this? And it's like a weird little thing. That's what's trying to keep your moving center from doing what it loves to do. Yeah?
Right.
How about an instinct? What would you say? We've
Ah,
got
geez.
air and fire. We've got the two positive vectors of this. Instinctive center.
Ah, God, for some reason Earth, but I don't have a valid reason for even saying that. I don't.
Yeah. What
Um, it's very grounding or needing to be grounded. I don't know why I would say Earth. Um, the emotions are more gaseous or air.
we've already got air, unless you want to change your mind.
No, no, no.
Instinct would correspond to water.
Water. Okay.
Here's
Okay.
why. Because water is all of your fluid systems inside you is what's the regulating aspect of you.
Yes.
Right? That's all. That's the part of you that
Yes.
removes waste. That yeah, it does.
The
Excuse me, does all
coolant.
that type of work for
Yes.
you. Yeah.
Right.
And interestingly enough, I think we talked about this last time, but the planet that goes with water is Jupiter.
Yes.
Now, I'm sorry, let me put it a different way. The planet that would go with the instinctive center would also be Jupiter. And here's a very curious thing. Jupiter is the regulator and guard of our solar system. When asteroids and other kind of interstellar debris enter our solar system, Jupiter is so powerful in its gravitational field that it diverts those back out of our solar system. As they're coming in around the outer belts, they encounter Jupiter, and Jupiter deflects. So many, if we didn't have Jupiter, uh, so many things would have already destroyed the Earth by this point in time. So it's kind of that king, that protector, that that regal has control over the kingdom and will or will not allow certain things in. Very, very much like that. Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so then we've got emotion, which is what you were just describing a bit ago,
Yep.
but probably attributing to the wrong thing. Emotion having to do with earth. That's that's where people get a little confused because we live with such
Yes.
tumultuous,
Yeah.
something like that,
Tumultuous. Yep. Yep.
tumultuous emotions all the time. When in fact, the emotional center should be that one that's grounded, that's stable, that you can trust. Yeah. I mean, you should have a number of people in your life that out of the blue one day just say, I feel so safe with you. Yeah. Because that means that your emotional center is offering a kind of foundation that people know that they can rely and stand upon. They will feel safe with you if your emotional center is intact. Now, we will at some point in time do particular training about how the emotional center should or how to train it to operate at its peak performance. One of those has to do with not expressing negative emotions. I didn't say don't feel a negative emotions. Don't feel negative emotions, but don't express them. And there's a very specific reason why that is, because it creates a friction that then you can transmute in an alchemical sense, transmute that in your body,
Yep.
refine it into a higher type of energy, and eventually have it running on C12 to go back to hydrogens, right? You got H40 or H48 up here gets its way to C12 and then C6, or I should say La 12, C6, yeah, are the hydrogens that these centers run on. But, okay, so now we've got the four elements, uh, air, fire, water, and earth, having to do with the four centers. Let's move it over to this board here, okay, because I've got hot, cold, wet, and dry. This is the
Right.
foundation of these four elements. So let's start with thinking center, all right? Hot and wet, warm and wet. Okay, so you've got air in this quadrant.
Yep.
Yeah. What do we have in the hot and dry?
Hot and dry is oh my Lord, that's the fire.
Yeah, fire. Right. How about let's see, wet and cold. That's the easy one.
Yeah, you water
Wet and cold. Yeah, exactly. And then dry and cold,
would be earth.
earth. Very good. Okay, now this gives you clues, already gives you clues into how each of these centers should operate. Your thinking should be warm and fluid. Yeah, have this kind of fluidity to it, but also a warmth to it, like air does. Yeah, you're not shivering in the cold, hopefully, most of the time anyway.
All
Uh,
right.
this is how your thinking should actually be. Your moving center, hot and dry. Yeah, you're out there just pushing, right? It's a hot and dry. It's a fire in your moving center.
Yeah.
Uh, what we got? Emotional center. This is the one that will irritate people until they understand it because it's dry and cold. The emotional center has such a power in it. If you preserve that emotional energy, in other words, you keep it dry and cold, you keep it in this kind of stasis, it can develop such amazing power. Gurdjieff one time talked about he had a, I'm going to get the animal wrong, but he had this power. He had developed this ability that he knew if he wanted to kill a yak a half a mile away, he could do it just by focusing on it. Right. That's what now obviously, we're not in the business of killing yaks or
Right,
whatever,
right.
but it's analogous. It's analogous to the type of energy that the emotional center can begin to store once it's working in that dry and cold way. This is where you get into the not expressing negative emotions type of thing. Got this sort of dryness and coldness about it. Doesn't mean you're dead, doesn't mean you lack sentiment. But most of the time, people around you are going to feel a different sort of frequency than if you're emotionally unstable. Yeah. And then instinct, wet and cold, obviously, right? I mean, it's the epitome of water. It's flushing you out. It's got all these aspects to it of cooling you down. Right? It kind of works against. There's this interplay here between these two and these two, but works against the heat of the moving center. Yeah, cool, right? How that all works out.
Oh, very much.
And then the sexual center, we've talked about this before. And the reason why the symbols are the way they are is because when you get into the term ether, you've got the symbols in here. For example, the I should say, air symbol is this upward pointing triangle with this line across. Okay, so
Right.
it's this kind of line in here. You get the upward pointing triangle as it is, you get the downward pointing triangle as it is, and then you get the modified downward pointing triangle with this line across it. Yeah,
Yes.
so you've got these, this is where the symbols come from. That's why they look the way that they do. Has to do with how this upper and lower is split out. And in one of his books, Gurdjieff actually makes this symbol and says that it's very similar to the Enneagram in there, where you've got this kind of going this way, this way, this way. I can't do it. I'm not doing it justice, but what he's
Oh,
saying.
yes, yes,
Yeah, you've
yes,
seen it, right? Yeah, he
yes.
has this kind of symbol in here, which is what he's really alluding to is this diagram here. That is the sexual center. Okay. Now, the reason why I say is that it rarely works the way that it should in most people is because you can't have this kind of balance in the sexual center until these other ones are all in their proper alignment and place. What you end up getting is the sexual center is depleted, and so it's going to rob something from the moving center, or it's going to rob from the emotional center, or a lot of times even from the thinking center, and it's a mess. Our pentagram, we have a broken pentagram that is completely a mess. Yeah, in there, and so that's the reason for it. Now, when I say sexual center, at the lower end of it is procreation. Yeah, where you're
Right.
making babies, right? I mean, you're propagating the species is what you're doing with the sexual center. That's the lower end of it. The higher end of the bar of the sexual center is very connective. It's able to take forces in the universe and merge and marry them for a specific result, either in your life or in your ecology or in the lives of others. And you would say it's creative as opposed to procreative, but not just standing behind a jet engine of an airplane and throwing paint and watching it. That's not creativity. You've probably
Yeah.
seen this that I'm talking about, right? Just
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not. It might have been creative in the approach. That's not the kind of creativity that we're
Right.
talking about. We're
Right.
talking about being able to take the yellow force in the universe and a blue force in the universe or a bank of force in the universe, take those two together and actually make green out of it. The human can marry essences. The human can take two essences and provide that neutralizing vector to bring them into something. Green is neither blue nor yellow, it's something new. That's an example of a creative process.
Right. Right.
They can't do it alone. Get a bank of yellow force and a bank of blue force in the universe. They can't come together because they have no common medium in which to do so. They can only do that in the human.
Yes.
But and in organic life, they can only do that in organic life, I should say, not just in the human. All right, I'll pause there for some questions, and then I want to give you something practical.
It, yeah, it's
We do great lessons, don't we? I mean,
yes,
we don't
yes.
get lessons. We never got lessons like this. Yeah, we do
No,
good
no.
work. We do good work.
Oh, me oh my. Have you ever had the perception or the understanding of what is possible for us humans in that way, to have that understanding, not seeing how to get there, but to have that understanding that we have the potential to do things that are absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even the thought of taking two different essences and marrying them to produce something new, that is a creativity, that is like the ultimate, um I mean, not, I can't say ultimate, but that is I'm going to just put it out there, is the ultimate expression of the sexual energy that is possible,
Yeah.
that which springs forth, that is new, that is it's God, I have it in my head.
Let me give
It's
you an example. This will help clarify, I think, what you're trying to say. I'm going to go
yes.
back to martial arts for a moment. Okay.
Okay.
Now, in our modern society, we have what's called mixed martial arts,
Right.
which is someone goes and studies Brazilian jiu-jitsu for 2 years, and then they go and study Muay Thai, and then maybe some karate, and maybe some Western boxing, right? And they get out in the ring, and they've got kind of these skills where they can do various things from various different styles. That is what it is. All right. I'm not here to opine about what that is. It just is what it is. It serves its function. However, another example that one would confuse as being the same thing is take something like drunken monkey kung fu
Yes.
as
Yes.
an
Right.
example, right?
Yes.
Where a master, the way the story goes was, he had studied drunken style kung fu, which is a very kind of, it's a funny style to watch. It really is.
It is
And
right.
and another one had studied monkey kung fu, right? And they ended up kind of getting together during their time together, and they had that sort of mixing that happened. And what came out of it was drunken monkey kung fu, which is not monkey style or drunken style. It's literally
Right.
its own style. It's its own thing. So gotta be careful of the camera. I gesture. I gesture. Uh, that's kind of what you're saying, though. Now it's
Yes.
not just a
Exactly.
hodgepodge.
It's
The
exactly.
difference, you can take it chemically too, since we like to talk about alchemy. Take it chemically, right? You can have what's called a mechanical mixture, or you can have a chemical bond. A mechanical mixture would be if I take a bunch of iron filings and some sulfur, put them in a jar, and shake them up. They might be evenly distributed without, but if I take a magnet I can suck all of the iron right back out of it and leave just the sulfur behind. That's a mechanical mixture.
Yes.
A chemical compound, I'm not sure what word I used just a moment ago, but a chemical bond is if you take sulfur and iron filings, put them in a beaker, heat them until a chemical reaction takes place, you get this kind of plasticky brown sludge that then hardens into sort of a hard thing. It will neither burn and smell, stink like sulfur, nor can you attract it with a magnet. It is something different. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're talking about with marrying these essences and the role of the sexual center. It's a chemical union. Yeah, Christian Rosenkreuz's chemical union. What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes,
Rosicrucians?
yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christian Rosenkreuz. You've got the German and you probably
Oh, very
appreciate
much.
say it better than I do. But okay,
It's
so we've got this uh, instinctive. Now what I want to do is move it on to something practical.
okay.
Okay, and it's going to give you something that you can do over the next few weeks. Um, there are essentially 5 manifestations, external manifestations that one human can pick up on from another, or learn to pick up on in themselves. Okay, this is where we begin the kind of the work of self-development, personal development. The first one is tone. And by tone, I mean kind of the timbre, the cadence, all of this sort of thing that you speak with. If I'm having a conversation with you, I have a certain tone in the way that I'm communicating that reveals, well, actually, what does it reveal? Which of the 5 centers is associated with tone? Now,
It
real
is
quick, yeah, go
emotion.
ahead. Huh?
Emotion.
No, it's not emotion.
Now,
It's not emotion. Think of how tone is transmitted from myself to you. It's transmitted through which medium?
through sound, basically, or through
Through
the
air, right?
like,
Transmitted through sound, through the medium of air.
yes,
Okay, so tone
sound air.
tells you what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's not what you said; it's how you said it. Have you ever heard
Right.
that expression? Yeah,
Yes.
because someone who picks up on this sort of discrepancy between the actual language used and the tone coming across. Yeah, you get these things, right? Like
Yes.
I can
Yes.
say, I can say, oh really? Or I can say, oh really? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all in the tone, same words, but you get this completely different kind of resonance as far as what's really going on in my mind. If I say, oh really, it's going to make you want to continue to explain yourself if we're having a dialogue about something. Yeah. Whereas
Yeah.
if I'm like, oh really, it conveys that mentally I get it. I'm excited about it. Yeah?
Yeah.
So tone tells you what they're thinking, tells you what they're processing upstairs. Uh, let's go on to moving center. It's the easiest one. First of all, we said moving center is fire, right?
Right.
How they're moving tells you what their moving center is doing. Okay, if they're you know walking around like this and all slow and that type of thing, their moving center is hurting or it's aching or it's in cahoots with the instinctive center. But how a person moves tells you what their moving center is doing. Yeah? It's their how much fire they have in themselves. Uh, now, the next one, let's see. The next one is gesture. This one's going to throw you too. What do you think gesture goes with?
Gesturing has to be well, I was going to say come back to emotion again. the emotion, but that's not, I don't think that's it. Gesturing is, yeah, it's funny because I can tell a lot about somebody's emotions when they're gesturing. It's very either very sharp or
You would think so. You would think so, but once we get on to the emotion or which manifestation the emotion is, you'll understand why it's not gesture. Although there is that joke, right? How do you shut an Italian up?
yeah,
You tie their hands behind their back, right? Because they can't
exactly.
speak when they're not moving their hands. But it can be a very emotional culture, can't it? But um, yeah, gesture ties into the instinct. And the example is this: public speakers, people who get out in front of other people, often don't know what to do with their hands. Like suddenly their hands are like these awkward mitts that they're, like, what do I do with my hands? Now you would think, what does that have to do with talking to people?
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, nothing. But it's because the instinctive center uses gesture in order to convey itself. And it did this originally. It borrows it from fight or flight. Yeah, fight, flight, flee, hide, run. These types of things. Those are the most primal gestures. I know this camera's trying to call me again, so I'm gonna not gesture. Just a second.
So here's an odd thought is there was a lady that her hands were so active.
Hmm.
So we did an experiment on we actually tied her hands down behind her back and
Not
she was
supposed to
sitting
do
in a
that to
chair.
lady. You
I'm
get thrown
sorry.
in jail in some places for that.
I know, right? And you know what was amazing is all of a sudden she was sitting down,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden her feet were in the air, moving around just like her hands
Yeah,
were.
right. It's
And it
got
was
to get
not even a
out.
thought process; it was just immediate.
It's got to get out. Yeah.
Exactly, it bowled us over. It was stunning. I've never seen that before or since. Neither have I tied people up, but um, I've seen very few people that are very you know everything that they talk about. They're very descriptive with their hands. They're gesturing.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's an instinctive response.
Yeah.
You'll understand why. You're going to actually play around with these types of things a little bit over the next week or month or whatever you wish. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then posture is to do with emotion. If you see someone like this,
Oh,
right, and
that's it.
has kind of that demure, I can't even do it right, but has that, sort of
Oh, that
demure posture.
Eeyore, Eeyore
Yeah,
posture.
Igor, right? Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I'll lost
Yeah.
my tail again, right? Yeah, it'll probably rain. But yeah, that their posture is the expression of their emotional life, of their emotional content. If you're depressed, yeah, and you fix your posture. I mean, take that kind of breath in. It's very difficult to be depressed when you have this open, alive, vibrant posture going on. This is almost impossible. Yeah, it's almost impossible to feel uh, courageous and strong emotionally if you're in,
Yeah.
in that kind of posture as well. So,
I instinctively started playing around with that. It's so curious. I found myself being timid and very unsure, and I squared my shoulders. I puffed my chest out, and I walked right into the midst of whatever it was, right? And
yeah.
I felt so different. It was amazing. And at first, I thought it was affecting the environment, which I believe I was in part, um, but I was definitely affecting myself.
Ah,
But I could feel it in myself.
yeah.
It was unnerving to pull my shoulders back in the midst of that was going on and stand tall, puff my chest out proudly, not arrogantly, but to stand proud. And I found there was a strength in that, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah, very very interesting.
Okay, so there's the chart for you. I'll let you
Oh,
copy that
yeah,
down.
I've got that written down. Yes, yes. This
You already got it written down?
yes.
Okay. Expression is the sexual center. Yeah. You get the, Pepe Le Pew, right? The kind of expression, the expression people carry, especially in their faces. You order my peanuts, I'm paying you a brittle. Like, yeah, but it's the expression on a person's face that gives you the insight into what their sexual center is doing. Yeah. Like you get these people that will absolutely objectify the opposite sex, like get that kind of, and they get the snarl in their face and, like, yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
really
weird. You know what I'm saying though, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
their countenance will change
yeah.
based on their creative life or procreative life or how they view and approach things or which center has infected the sexual center, for example. Yeah. You can have a very thoughtful sexual center. It shouldn't be that way. You can have a very just moving oriented sexual center. It shouldn't be that way. Because the sexual center, if you recall, is that balance point. Everything
Yes.
in, and it'll show up on the expression on a person's face. So that's what it is. I mean, jump in front of the mirror and try and look as attractive as you can, right? Type of thing
I had a
before you go
roommate that
out,
way. Yes,
thing,
yes, yes.
how's my face? Different cancer, kind of stuff, right? That's it. Okay, so the five centers, the five manifestations. During this exercise, what I'd like you to try and do is forget all about intuition, clairvoyance, all of these kinds of ethereal things that we attribute to ourselves that we probably don't have as much of as we think we do anyway.
Yeah.
And focus on these. Okay, tone, movement, gesture, posture, expression. Focus on those. Whenever you're dealing with a person, just try it. Try to understand their tone. Try to mum their tone. You know, mumming, right? Where you kind of
Yes.
take on something. Take on their tone and mum it. Take on the way that they move. Alter your stride and meet a stranger. Yeah, you've heard this expression before. Pick up the pace at which people move at. Yeah, someone walking down the hall. Oh, there's this great mime that I watch sometimes on YouTube or whatever, and he's kind of chunky, right? And he's got this white striped shirt and a white painted face, and he's really good at mumming because there's this one scene where there's this kind of burly guy walking down the street. He picked it up exactly. He starts walking towards him, just kind of like
Oh, that's
picking
so
it up. It was
awesome.
really fun to watch. But
Oh, yes.
to a lesser degree, in other words, we're not out to mock people,
No, no,
but
no, no.
yeah,
It,
but try and pick up the way someone moves, yeah, the way they gesture. I had to watch a training video, and I won't say the company because they're humongous and they could sue me. but but it was a training video, and the presenters would be like, "And now what you will do is you will take X Y Z, and you
oh,
will then go." I was just like, God, I couldn't even watch it. I just like turn sideways and just listen to the presenter because the movements were very scripted. awkward,
yes.
awkward. The
Yeah,
gestures, I should say, were very scripted. And it was so awkward to watch. It was like uncomfortable.
exactly.
But pick up people's gestures. Try to, when you're having a conversation with them, try to actually mirror their gestures. Yeah. And get inside it from their perspective. What does it feel like to gesture like they do? What does it feel like to walk the way they do? Yeah, those types of things. Posture, pick up their
Yes.
posture and feel what it feels like, when you're dealing with somebody or you're dealing with somebody, whatever.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
but get inside of it, okay?
This,
Only do it externally for a couple of weeks. Don't think about yourself.
right, right.
After a couple of weeks of becoming a master of picking up these and understanding how it feels, then watch yourself in your native environment. Shift over the perception so that you begin to understand the habitual postures you take, for example. Understand the pace at which you walk. Understand what your habitual gestures are. Understand what facial expressions you try to mask out there into the world. So you know what I mean, though, right? So yeah,
I
so
do.
start
So
with others, mum it, and then move to yourself, and then see if you can mum yourself. Do you know what I mean by that? Mum yourself, and that will open up what's going on in you, what each of these centers is like.
so never even thought about it in this context, but I do a lot of this with people.
Yeah, well, because you're
Not all
naturally
the time.
empathic anyway.
I'm sorry?
You're naturally empathic anyway. I know this about you.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And people have many different responses back, which is really, to me, I get quite a kick out of it because they're so diverse. It's not everybody being offended because they realize that you're looking and talking, moving like them. But I get the whole the responses. I've actually had people that I could feel this warmth come from them, this comfortability come from them. Others felt very hostile, like I was competition, and
Yeah,
I could feel that from them, like, hey, wait a minute, I'm the peacock, you look like another peacock, we're going to go head to head on this. That kind of competition. I felt that come out of people, but I never thought of it in this context. But I found myself some ways that I've actually got into people in the manner of so I have a coworker, one of my clients rather. He said, he says amazing. He says there isn't a person out here that you don't get along with.
hmm,
And I have to laugh because I thought about it, but not in this context. But thought about all the things I've done in order to win these clients over, if you will, not win them
yeah,
over necessarily, but make my life easier
sure.
and get them to work for me, if that makes sense. It's not manipulation, but I get them to um I
Well,
work
like,
yes,
right? Something
yes.
that's like something.
And it's like a great
Tuning
form of
fork.
flattery in some
Tuning
cases.
fork is what
Most of
it
the
is.
cases, I think it's a great form of flattery. People they warm up to you. Now there's a few individuals, like I said, you feel like there's like I forget like the fish, the fighting fish,
Yeah.
the beta.
Beta,
So you put a mirror up to it and it puffs up, right?
beta
And
fish. Yeah, the betas, fighting betas.
yes, and I've had people that actually were just like that. It was amazing. And I thought, wow, it's a beta fish, not beta I'm the alpha, they're the beta. It just that beta fish came to mind when I see these individuals that puff up and they're like, it's like they're looking at themselves in the mirror and they're what? There's another beta in here. Um, but the other thing I noticed too is I found ways to actually deal with people
Uh-huh.
in a manner that it was far deeper than I thought. If that makes sense, it's like being able not to manipulate, but to actually get to work with people in a progressive manner.
Yes.
It like lubricating the wheels or lubricating the gears, if you will, um, by doing this action of mumming them to a degree. You know, and it's funny because I find myself, and I got to be careful at work, but I find myself sometimes following either the customers out there or my clients, and I find myself doing that walk,
Mhm.
and yeah. So, at any rate, little
Yeah.
bird, light serpent, and that's another one that's very fascinating.
It's the same thing. It's just a different
Yes.
way to put the same thing. Okay. I put the alchemical symbols next to it. For bull, you've got earth. For bird, you have air. Lion, fire, and serpent, water. Easy
Right.
to translate it over to this, but
Yeah.
you'll see people who kind of clutch through life a little bit. They're very bull-like, the heavy steps and kind of just bull-like in their mannerisms. You get people that are bird-like, like oh, oh, oh. The people that are lion-like, where you feel that power in them as they come towards you, almost like your prey. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you get the serpents, right? But you don't really know what the hell they're thinking. They're just kind of
It it it's funny because the actually you have two similar on there. So the
what?
serpent should
Serpent,
be
lion, and bird? Huh?
you've got the bull and the serpent have the same symbol.
Oh, you're right. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, it's good. I just got that. I was
No, no,
just
no,
like
no, no, no. Yeah. Actually, it was the serpent.
reversed there.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I think it
Yeah.
was just
Thanks.
so no, it's good. It's good. Um I real quick story on a bird. I watched a man going down Pearl Street Mall
Hmm.
that had to have weighed almost 600 pounds. He was a very, very large, very huge man. And I was mesmerized at how bird-like this man was.
Yeah. Some people are like that, right?
Unbelievable. Yeah, for
Yeah.
even for the girth, the weight of this man, he was so light on his feet, and his eyeballs were always, flitting around looking, and he was very light on his feet for that tremendous amount of weight. Um, the serpent, I did meet a lady in the Eamon. There was a Jamaican lady. I don't
Names
think you
don't matter. I understand. Names don't
doesn't
matter.
matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that was the only person that we could actually observe in that serpent mode without her disappearing into one of the other three.
Well, the thing is that that's what the serpent tends to do. It's very
Yes,
blended. It'll blend in type of thing.
exactly.
Um, yeah. All right, my friend, I'm going to wrap it up. Okay. Okay. Going to wrap it up.
All right, took a drink of coffee. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Gave you hopefully a lot to work with. And I do
Very
hope
much.
that it's an approach to the centers mixed with alchemy, mixed with a few other things in a way that you haven't had before. So